Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident.
Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Gail Swift. Gail Swift's path to becoming a speaker advocate for youth became clear when she was 15 due to experiencing the pain herself. Putting effort into being something foreign to herself and how she was born to work was stressful. The pattern for taking action was not around when she was a teen. However, it is now. And back then, she wanted to shout it from the rooftops. Gail Swift is fiercely committed to guiding students to achieve the confidence to take action, certainly in their natural abilities, and clarity in their contribution. Why? So they can have their dream life their way. With more than a dozen years of experience working with amazing clients with similar worries and concerns, and guiding them to achieve remarkable success, her company Plans to Prosper's mission is to ensure college-bound students know their ideal major. What really excites Gail about her work is knowing that every single student is created with a pattern, of taking action, one that does not change over time. Their unique pattern predicts their path, which leads to their purpose. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Gail. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
I am so thankful to be here, Dwight. Thank you so much. Yes.
You're welcome. I appreciate you coming on. I'm excited for this conversation. Our pre-conversation prior to recording was amazing, so I imagine this will be even better. So, Gail, one of the things in life that I really focus on in my podcast and life in general when I build relationships with people is to understand their origin story. Throughout my life, it frustrates me when the movie industry or anybody in general always focuses only from, your mid part of your life. What has Gail done since she finished school? Well, part of school is what defined who you are today, good or bad. Not saying it's all good, but it actually takes us on different journeys and paths. And it's important for the listeners and I to understand what things in your childhood helped direct your course, right? Helped fill your sail up with wind and pushed you in a different direction. So, Gail, tell me your origin story and what key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently.
Origin story. Wow. My husband and I were just talking about this, and it's interesting that you ask the same thing. I grew up with a lot of screaming and yelling. My dad would lose his temper quite a bit, and my mom was consistently pushing him to provide something he couldn't. So there was a lot of screaming. I ran away like a dozen times, and I would go and befriend. I don't think I've ever said this. I would go and befriend dogs in the neighborhood because they were always happy to see me. They gave me unconditional love. And I appreciated that. They knew me, and I would go around. I had a route, and I would just go around and hang out with the dogs in the neighborhood that were chained up or behind the fence. And the owners knew who I was by this point. And I would come up with Dwight with crazy ideas. And on the playground, I'd be like, let's do this. And people would start to look at me like I was nuts. Like, that's weird. And I think that from those observations, I stopped coming up with ideas. I kind of sat back a little bit because I wasn't celebrated with my weirdness. I was weird. I was an ugly duckling. kind of in the corner. And so I stopped coming up with ideas. And my parents believed I had a lack of focus with my continuing to do different things at different times. I couldn't focus. And that was a problem, apparently, because in school, I needed to focus. And being on one task for a very long time was very boring for me. So it's not something that I wanted to do. So I was put on some Halidol and dopamine when I was 5 years old to help me focus. Turns out it didn't really help me focus. It just, I gained weight. And I don't know if you're wanting to know what age?
Whatever you want to share.
So around the age of 15, which is what you read in my bio, and why I believe the way I do and why I know what I know. I was 15 years old and I was on medication. Why I was put on the Halidol and dopamine is because I was diagnosed with Tourette's syndrome, which is a cognitive disorder. And I was diagnosed when I was 5. When I was 15 years old, I went to a place to work for the summer. But instead of being myself, I decided that I would pay attention to all the cool kids in school and watch what they did and how they interacted. And I decided that I wanted to be that person because those people were well liked and they said the right things and they did the right things. So I went to this place where no one knew me and I tried to be the cool kid. I tried to be someone I wasn't. And it backfired, completely backfired on me. I wound up overdosing due to the pain on the exact meds that were there to calm me down. I wanted to calm myself down permanently. And I took them on a Friday evening, and I woke up on Saturday and I started cleaning the lodge because the guests filtered out and then came back in. And I remember telling the staff, I said, I can't do this. I need to go to sleep. I took a lot of pills last night and I just need to go to sleep. They're like, what? So they went and got the owner. And I just said, you guys, I just need to sleep. I slept until Monday afternoon. And I woke up and I looked in the mirror and I had black and blue circles under my eyes. It looked like I had been hit a lot. And I remember calling my family. They wanted to know how I was. I was still at the lodge and they immediately put me on a plane to go back home. And I went back home and I was put in group therapy for about a year. Before I went to group therapy, I stopped to see my neurologist and he looked at me and said, Gail, I can't believe you're here right now. You took 4 times the lethal amount of medicine and you're still here. I am still here. So when I was in therapy for a year, an interesting thing happened. Everyone around me had really severe family issues and problems. They had come from tough situations. And I thought, you know what? I didn't come from a tough situation. Who am I to talk or complain? I don't have anything to complain about compared to these kids. And I found myself not saying anything again. And the therapist said to me, hey, Gail, you have something to contribute. You have something to say. We'll wait until you talk. So in a group of about 10 teenagers, I waited and I waited 20 minutes. People were getting really irritated, but I finally shared. And I've been sharing ever since, because he was right. My pride was getting in the way completely. And over time, I mean, that's been badgered down and down and down, but I did share. And that being someone else, going to that lodge, Dwight, and being someone that I wasn't born to be, trying to be someone else was the most painful place I've ever been in, one of them. And that, I would say, is most of my origin story.
That's amazing. I can resonate with a lot of what you said. Not necessarily do all kids grow up going through the screaming and yelling, but it lots do, because people don't know how to regulate how they communicate with children, especially, or they're having a bad day and their kids are their punching bag verbally, and sadly some physically as well. So I could feel your pain as you were talking about that, because it affects us. And then on top of that, I understand that you talked about Tourette's. My one daughter is diagnosed with moderate Tourette's, and we had a hard time when she was growing up, and she ended up having to go into the hospital for a week, and they put this brain cap on her, and we had to take shifts. Her mom and I took shifts with her over that 7-day period for them to find out why she was having the problems that she was having. And she's managed to get to a point where she doesn't necessarily control it through medication, but she does specific things, because the amount of glasses, for an example, I lost because her Tourette's sort of affects her left side of her body. She's also, but unfortunately or fortunately, she's left-handed. So, right, she still doesn't have a driver's license. Her Tourette, they won't give her one because of her Tourette's. So kind of felt that pang of right here when you said that, because that is something that, as a parent, helping my daughter through it, tough thing. Yeah. So good for you. But yeah, what's the first thing they do though? When you talked about the fact of drugs, well, they wanted to do that with my daughter too. They give her drugs, this and that, but she didn't feel right when she was on them. I'm not saying for those listening that drugs can't be utilized correctly to help people out, but there's always a cost, a consequence to taking medication. So just be aware of that if you have children, or even as an adult, if you're somebody that takes medication. There's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes you don't need it anymore. So be cognizant of that as well, and do some research, reach out to people. Sometimes there's other ways to deal with the things that the drugs are masking, and they're stopping you from being the most ultimate version of yourself. So again, do the best possible way that you can do it. So, but I like the fact you talked about you 15 years old and you mimicked other cool kids. How many people are like that? A lot of us. I felt like an outcast. I was bullied growing up. So then I tried being somebody I wasn't to try to fit in. And it wasn't until I hit high school that I realized I didn't want to belong in cliques anymore. I didn't care about the jocks. I didn't care about the yuppies or the nerd kids. I cared, and when I say I don't care about them, I didn't care to be involved in their cliques. I wanted to be friends with everybody. So I took a stand, and that stand pushed me outside of all the cliques until I found my tribe, and they found me. And some of the people in the tribe were from all those cliques. It was amazing when I look back on it now as an adult. It's amazing what we learn as kids to be resilient and to stand out and be ourselves. I can't believe it though. Like, to be diagnosed with Tourette's at 5, I didn't even think that was a possibility at that young of an age.
I was put in, and I had the electrodes on my head twice. Like, I did it over a couple of years, and just to make sure it was Tourette's. Not to mention that I work very differently than my parents, so that they were seeing both of those. It was like a double whammy. 2 out of the 3 parts of the mind were very different from how they do things.
Yeah. So, well, like they say, one of the things that's resonated with me my whole life, what people aren't automatically up on, they're down on. And with our parents, they reflect on to us what their expectations are. And that was reflected on to them from learned behavior from their family and friends. And then when you have a condition like you had that they don't understand, the first thing they're going to do is listen to a medical professional. I went through that with my oldest daughter, getting to a point where they diagnosed her with bipolar. Years later, they found out she's not bipolar. She's on the autistic scale. She has a very rare form of autism, very high functioning. Biggest thing is, though, is parents want to trust the medical community. And the reason I bring this up is the medical community is not always right. All right. So in your case, I'm not saying they weren't. All I'm saying is, listeners, your parents are doing the best they can to help raise you. They're not doing it to be harsh or mean. But once you get to a level in your life where you can challenge the status quo of what people tell you, get checked out again. Right. If you're a young person, because I do have a young audience that listens to, it's okay to challenge the medical community. They're human beings that are not perfect. Sometimes they get it right, and they will get it right and have gotten it right, but maybe they're not on their game as a professional, meaning there's new therapies out there that can help you. So always be willing to put yourself out there and say, hey, is there something better I can do? And if you're not that close to your doctor, find another doctor. Or go, there's so many online forums nowadays that you can vent and find out good information. But, I can't imagine. So you went through the screaming and the yelling, you were diagnosed with Tourette's, you felt like an outcast, right? All the things that I've experienced in my life as well. Not necessarily the Tourette's, but I had other health issues, severe health issues when I was growing up. We don't need to get into that, but the overdose of the meds, and the realization that you took 4 times the amount and you're still here, that tells me that God had a bigger picture for you. Whether, again,
amen,
right? Whether or not the people that are listening, I have lots of listeners that are atheists, agnostic, and they're fine with that. I talk to some of them. It's okay. We all have our own belief system, but I believe we were put on this planet for a reason. And your reason was to give back. Look where you are now in your life, and look where and we're going to get into that more throughout this conversation. So thank you so much for sharing. I realize a couple of the things you talked about were things that you haven't necessarily shared, but I appreciate it, because every time we share and are vulnerable, it can help somebody that's listening to us push past that mental barrier and take that first baby step. Maybe that first baby step is to reach out to you. Reach out to me, whoever, just to get some help. We're never alone, listeners. Honestly, I truly believe that. We hide from help that is brought to us, right? Or we're so focused on anguish and grief that we avoid the help that has been sent to us. And I'm telling you, if you're listening to this, Gail and I are here for you. Reach out.
Yes. You are never alone. Exactly.
Never, right? So, Gail, you were part of the first group of Kolbe Youth Advocates in the world. And the first time through, you flunked out a Kolbe certification. You ended up having to work 6 more months in this time. You had to complete many books, research papers, and conduct numerous Kolbe interpretations. What exactly is Kolbe? And along the journey to certification, what drove you to persevere and continue on and not quit after flunking out the first time?
You're right. Right. So Kolbe is a person. Kathy Kolbe is the one. She's the theorist, not the theory. So her dad developed the Wonderlic IQ test a long, long time ago. She's from Chicago, the Chicago suburbs. And her dad developed the Wonderlic IQ. It's a mental ability test. And her mom was an orphan. So she grew up extremely resilient. And Kathy Kolbe herself is dyslexic. So in 1991, of course, when the turmoil was happening, my mom decided that I needed some focus. So she did get me a Kolbe test in 1991. And I, for the first time in my life, heard from the woman across the table that one of my largest contributions to the world is being last minute. I heard that my switching gears and not needing to finish what I start is a gift. If we could just, those 2 points, where in school I did not hear that in school. I didn't hear that at all from anybody. And so to have this woman validate my innate ability was fantastic. What it is, so Kathy Kolbe developed an algorithm with her son to measure how people work when free to be themselves. So they need the motivation, Dwight. That's their personality. And then when they decide to take action and do something, there's a pattern that happens. And that's what Kolbe measures. It's a 4-digit number. And that pattern over time, the more I lean into it and grow into it, has given me the confidence to keep going and do what I do and persevere when I fail. I wanted 3 things after my kids got a little older. I wanted to be a life coach, certified Kolbe consultant, and crisis intervention worker. I wanted to do those 3 things. So the first one, life coach, fantastic, done, saved my money, did that. And the second one was more expensive, a Kolbe consultant. I was in a position where my kids were little. I was slinging hash at a waitress. I was a waitress for 10 years while they were little. I walked to it. My husband worked. I would stay home, and I really wanted this, and it was an expensive ordeal. So someone that I used to work with said, hey, you know what, Gail, I'm going to gift you $5,000. So you can go and get this certification because I know you're going to use it for good and you're going to make the world a better place. Where I instantly dropped to my knees and started crying because that's an amazing gift. On my Kolbe report in 1991, it had 15 careers that were ideal for me. So what I found myself doing in my working situations was very easily putting people in their best spot wherever I was. If I was in a television station, if I was in a diner, if I was in an office facility, it was easy for me to see what was a fit and what wasn't. So my big dream, how to use this, was I was going to know people's MO, their modus operandi, and then naturally put them where they belong. Well, when I went to certification, I found out that that wasn't available anymore, that those careers stopped being labeled on the Kolbe A Index in 1997. It had been a while. This was 2016. So I threw a bit of a fit and I was like, my dream's gone. I can't believe this. I had a temper tantrum, a little bit of one, pulled myself together, continued on in certification. And the very last day I asked a question. Kathy Kolbe was in the room, and so were other moderators. And there were about 10 HR people and 2 independent consultants, which I am. And I asked a question, and I knew by the look on Kathy Kolbe's face that I dug my grave. It was a question talking about, I worked with teens in a church and helping them get the first job and interview and things like that. And so I asked a question to that end, and she looked at me, and about a week later, I got a letter. And instead of a certification letter, I got, you don't get it letter. You're not getting this. And so in order to get it more, you need to go through 6 months of training, read all my research papers. And again, I was mad because, are you kidding? This gift that fell from the sky, someone believed in me. And not only that, after my temper tantrum, like you said earlier, you're in it. When I got out of it, nothing was going to stop me from being a Kolbe consultant. I was getting that degree no matter what it took. I'd come this far. This is what I wanted to do. It was going to be used in my life. And so for 6 months, I did more research, and I was persistent and tenacious, and I got it done. But what I didn't know, this is, of course, divine intervention. I didn't know that Kathy Kolbe had been working on a career assessment for the last 10 years that would blow my little 15 career thing on the Kolbe A Index out of the water. I had no idea. The other thing that I always wanted to do was work with youth, 15-year-olds. And I wasn't legally able to because she hadn't released the grip on youth. Working with kids in this capacity is extremely important, 3 years old and up, because what you say to them will leave an impact, and it needs to be right. And you need to know, I need to know what I'm doing. I need to be good at my craft. So when I persevered, I did get certified. And about a year later, the Career Index came out. And this all happened since 2016. And a year after that, Kathy Kolbe handpicked 15 people around the world to initiate the launch of Working with Kids for the first time. And I was one of them because I have a heart to work with youth. And I was thrilled. I was like, really? I get to be picked? That's fantastic. And that's what I'm doing today. So here's where I am.
That's awesome. That's amazing. One of the things that I see predominantly through our prior conversation and now through this conversation that we're recording, you're tenacious and so am I. You don't once you put your mind to something, you're not going to give up. You're going to understand, you're going to figure it out, you're going to level up. Most people use trials and tribulations to slow them down, and other people use it as I guess a mental drug to feed them, right? Like, screw that. You're going to say that I'm not ready. I'm going to do whatever it takes. You could have continued to stomp your feet and have a hissy fit and never gone back, but you decided to carpe diem. You seized the day and look where you are now. You've gotten what you wanted. But it goes to show you, though, you mentioned those specific steps all of a sudden, which were from the 90s. Now you're looking at 2016 and they've changed and it upset you. And a lot of people, though, that aren't tenacious would just quit. And how many people in life miss their dream of what they want to accomplish or achieve, or maybe they're still trying to figure out what they want to dream, their dream is and how to accomplish it. And they quit too soon. And right around the bend is the light at the end of the tunnel to where they can achieve it. So listeners, you need to be tenacious. You do. You need to have tenacity in your life. You need to look at stuff and go, it's not a failure. Failure is just a stepping stone to success. And don't let your mental mindset be the thing that crushes you. And obviously, don't let associations around you be the person that's, oh, you did good job, Gail.
Good point.
You'll do better next time on something else. Instead surround yourself with people that are going to say, you know what, Gail, whatever. Build a bridge, get over it, and time to move on and just be the ultimate version of yourself. And how can I help you? And if you have people like that in your life, or or even people in my life that'll say, you know what, I can't help you. I'm not sure how to help you, but I'm here for you. You can vent to me. Sometimes we don't need advice. We just need a listening ear. So I really like the fact, though, that I can't imagine. I'm trying to visualize you reading that letter, close my eyes right now, read that letter that said that you don't get it, and how I feel. It would be like, who do you think you are? Right. You get that little bit of angst and that little bit of hostility and like, screw you, but I don't know, that lasted a minute or a week or whatever, but you decided to, seize the day and be tenacious. And congratulations. That, I'm thoroughly enjoying listening to this from your origin all the way up to where you are now. I can't imagine where the rest of this conversation is going to go, because I have some other interesting things I want to discuss.
Sure.
So now I want to pronounce this right, not Colby, but how do Colby, is it conation or conation? Conation, third part of your mind tie together. You mentioned this is something you wish to discuss, and now I am curious how they tie together.
How does Colby and conation tie together?
Yes, and third party mindset.
Yeah. So when she was on the bus doing work for her father for the IQ part of the mind, so there are the three parts of the mind. It's the personality, your IQ or cognitive, and then conative. And conative has been around ever since Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates. It's called the moral compass back then, but no one has ever developed an algorithm to measure your instincts because they're a subconscious force. What the test does is it puts you into a state of having to decide what to do when there's a problem. And so you are put into a state of action on a particular issue, one that you want to solve. And from that 36 question forced choice assessment, out comes a 4-digit number. When she was doing homework on the bus, she said to her dad, "You know what, Dad, I'm recognizing that there are ways that people take action that are more than grades. Like, I'm noticing that football players are super talented in this capacity, but maybe they don't get the best grades in this subject." And on the other end of the spectrum, so she started noticing variables about people's success and said, "I don't think this is the only way to measure someone's performance." And her dad said, "Go for it, then figure it out." And when she was in school, she learned about this third part of the mind. And she had done research since before she could drive on human behavior and studying it. When her son, she has kids, when her son was born and he was in high school, they finally made an algorithm to prove her point about how people take action. And that when they are taking action in the way they were born to take it, they are most successful. Meaning, if you try and be something you're not and go against the grain, it will be stressful. And bad things could happen to you for stress or life. So the idea is to stay in your lane, go with your natural grain of solving problems. That's the connection with conation and Kolbe.
That is, wow. There were so many nuggets of information in there. Rewind, listeners, because I was jotting down stuff. You talked about, human nature. And that's one of the things that I challenge people to be a student of human nature, because our nature of who we are, our true nature, gets manipulated by our families, not intentionally. People, very few families intentionally want to damage their kids.
Right.
But their learned behaviors, their own addictive qualities become magnified, put upon us, thrust upon us, and our true nature, what you talked about, staying in your lane, is very difficult. And then we become mini-me's of society around us and what's put into our brain, our associations of not just people, what we watch, what we listen to, what we ingest in general. And it's very hard to find people that will nurture us to be in our lane, because even the most influential mentors that I've had, or coaches, are still trying to manipulate. They are still trying to indoctrinate their thought process instead of naturally nurturing and bringing you your lane, where you should be and what you're destined to be, out of you. So I caution people that are listening to, I can't help but always teach, right? That you need to be careful who's mentoring you. Will they allow you to challenge their mindset? Right? Obviously, it's really tough with parents. It's like beating your head against the wall. So find the associations of people that'll mentor you, that'll uplift you. And Kathy had that with her dad. I thought that was awesome. Like you mentioned that. That's amazing. And then indirectly, that was imparted on you.
Yes.
Right? Which is another great thing. It's amazing to me. I'm definitely going to have to do more research and have other conversations with you. And listeners, I'd highly recommend you look into it, because when you can take something of a moral compass that is really hard to, gauge, and apply it to something of a 36 question nature, come up with a like you said, a 4-digit system that can help you focus or ground you. It sounds like a compass to me. It sounds like an emotional and mental compass that'll actually help you find your true north. And that's very intriguing to me. Obviously, we don't have enough time to get into really more detail to it, but obviously you're easy to find.
Easy to find.
So I really appreciate that. But that's one of the things people, I'm on other podcasts or when I'm coaching, I'll tell people one of the things you need to utilize and realize in your life is that you have to be studying human nature. You have to study and be a student of human nature. It's not always what we say. It's how does the body react? Are you watching that person's eyes? Do you even actually look in a person's eyes, right? You look to see if they get the little wrinkles around the eyes, it can be a stressor. Or do you just see how their shoulders go? Or are they crossing their arms? Are they stepping back from you? Or are they stepping towards you? Are they leaning toward you to listen? Are they leaning back to avoid, right? Just little simple things like that. And it doesn't happen overnight, but that's how I'll close that part of our conversation, is that you need to be, like you mentioned, human nature. You need to be a student of it. So I appreciate your answer. I look forward to learning more about that. You and I are going to talk again.
That's great.
So Gail, I have never once had someone mention topics to discuss that are so different yet tie together in so many ways. At least I think they do. What comes to mind when I mention the following words: Jesus, suicide, and infertility?
Did I write that down?
Yes.
Did I?
You did on the application. You did, yes. And I was just like, wow, I like that. I'm asking you about that. You got to be careful what you put on my form. So anybody that's listening,
I do. I guess
be careful because you open the door to me asking you questions. Now, if it's something you don't want to discuss, we could obviously avoid it too. It's not a big deal.
No. You welcome vulnerability, and it's safe, or I wouldn't have typed it for sure. What is the common thread between those?
Yeah. Jesus, suicide, and infertility.
They're all a part of me. That's the common thread. They're all a part of me. The suicide story continued on in my family with my oldest child. And then the infertility, that happened in 2000. Actually, that happened a lot. That happened 3 times. I was pregnant 4 days, and then I was pregnant 20 weeks, and then I was pregnant 13 weeks. Right. And then the 20 week one was 16 or 20 weeks. I really, speaking of tenacious, Dwight, you're like, I can do this. I did something wrong. This is all me. I've had everything I want up until this point in life. I have a house. I married the man of my dreams. I have the car I want, the vacations. Now I'm going to have a baby. This is it. No chocolate, no coffee. And I really just squeezed so hard because there's something I can do to control this. There has to be, because I've controlled everything so far. And the 3rd miscarriage, I was in the same room and the nurse put the wand on my belly. And she sweetly smiled at me and said, "Hey, Gail, I'm going to go get the doctor." And she left the room, and I looked at the monitor and there wasn't a heartbeat. And I lost my stuff. I sat up and I'm like, you've got to be effing kidding me. Are you serious right now? Like, I've taken 5 years of my life to go through this. And this is it. Audibly in my left ear, I heard, "Hey, Gail. Yep. We can continue to play this game for the next 5 years. But this baby is mine, not yours. This baby's mine. So release the grip. I've got you. Just jump. I promise." I said, "Uncle, you win. I have nothing to lose. I have absolutely nothing to lose. I have nothing left. Take it all. It's all yours." 6 months later, an opportunity presented itself at work, and I quit my high-paying job, without a baby. My husband is making less than half of what I'm making. I don't know how it's going to work, but I knew I had to quit. So I quit. And the 4th and final artificial insemination was a success. That baby, that miracle baby, a few years ago went down the same suicide track that I did, where his final appointment in therapy, his dad and I agreed that he is a gift from God and he's on loan to us for as long as he sees fit. So I said to him in the parking lot before his therapy appointment, I took a risk, Dwight, and I said, this life is yours. We're not going to live it for you. You are a miracle. We love you, but you are first and foremost God's before you're ours. You have to want to be here more than we do. And he's like, I can't believe you're saying that, Mom. It sounds so trite. I can't believe you're saying that. And I said, we wouldn't do a thing differently, and we'll do everything for you all over again. So we went up to therapy, and about 20 minutes later, the therapist called me in, said, hey, Gail, how's Noah doing? I said, honestly, he's doing really well. He's communicating better, and he was. She said, that's what I think. I mean, he seems like he's in a really stable position. I don't think I need to see you guys anymore. And ever since then, he's God's first, as he was in the beginning. And he's been communicating with us, and we're communicating with him. That was 3 years ago.
Wow. That is amazing. So now I see how those three tie together.
Yeah.
I've experienced, not personally to me, but siblings going through infertility, people going through suicide, people that have committed suicide in my life, like close people to me. But you know, the tie that you talked about, that voice saying, this is my baby, that realization and that heightened place where you were angry, you were going to say F it all, you know, this is it. And then just to have that little voice ground you and bring you down and just that give me chills. That is just amazing. And to go through miscarriages like that and then have that miracle child and have that realization and telling your son that when he's, you know, through his counseling, that is amazing. This life is yours. That is so profound, because it is true. I tell people that all the time. You know, I can't want something for you more than you want it for yourself. Because if I'm constantly pushing you and I'm constantly dragging you through life, you're never going to find your purpose. You're never going to live life on purpose. You have to own your stuff. You have to own your life and realize that, you know, the ultimate version of you is simply a decision, and then put the actions in place to get there. It's not going to be, oh, today I'm the most important and most respectful and, you know, successful person on the planet. It takes work, but I love that. This life is yours. I can actually picture that as you were telling me that, you standing there telling your son. You're a great storyteller, by the way. So
thank you.
You're welcome. So thank you once again for sharing something that is so vulnerable. I really appreciate that. So the next thing, a question you mentioned that you struggle with. What's the difference between listening to your gut and being disciplined? I personally believe too many follow blindly disciplines and forget that our gut, when we listen to it, can be the best compass we have going to do the right thing. Many disciplines in life in our society, I believe, are created to mask helplessness and the fear of the unknown and help people feel in control. What are your thoughts about this?
I would agree with you. Honestly, Dwight, it seems that the more you know yourself, you'll take the disciplines in stride. Meaning, as long as it doesn't overrule you, I think the disciplines work. And if they need to change, then change them.
It's pretty straightforward.
That's my opinion on that, but I agree with you completely.
Yeah. See, I look at I guess it's not just disciplines in life. I look at the old wives' tales, they call them that, right? The old things that we hear from the different generations about how things should be and how we should define our lives and how we should walk the path of our lives, our journey. And you're right, some of them are good. but I find a lot of them are fractured and broken, and there's truth within them, half truths, but you still have to, any discipline, you have to look at it and actually take stock of it. Think about, what is that discipline that somebody has told me my life, or society has taught me, schools taught me, whatever the case may be. Or maybe it's something I just came up with in my mindset to protect myself as I was growing and becoming older. We always have to challenge disciplines. I believe we have to, even disciplines that we thought were correct, like, go back to Kathy with the 15 items, and then that changed. That was a discipline that you were excited about, but it changed, and you had to accept that it changed. A lot of people don't like the fact of their disciplines changing, and they'll still go out and project that same discipline to others when it's fractured, broken, it's been found to not be right. So one of the enduring things about yourself that I see is the fact that you're willing to accept that. You're willing to accept that disciplines can be good, but they also can be fractured, broken, but you're not going to let it slow you down, or you wouldn't be where you are with your certification with Kolbe. So good for you. But I was curious what you thought about that, about discipline.
I've also recognized that if the discipline overrules your gut is worth more than your discipline. So you'll be in a constant state of stress trying to adhere to that discipline, which goes to what you were saying. When people decide for themselves and they take ownership of it, it sticks. It has staying power, versus when you're borrowing that because you think it's the right thing to do. Do that originally and try it on like I have. And if it doesn't serve you for a long time, then give it back. Someone else can take it, put it back in the flow. I picture a road or a highway of disciplines, right? And then sometimes wherever we are on that highway, we take it out and then, oh, that's good. And we can put it back. And we have to evolve. I have with that discipline, which is what the phrase that I told you at the very beginning, do nothing when nothing works. Because there are adages, a job worth doing is worth doing well, or a good job is worth doing well. There are a lot of those that I poke holes in because it doesn't work with how I work. So
cliches. Yeah. There's lots of little sayings,
yeah,
mantras, whatever the case may be. But, disciplines are great until they're not.
right.
And most people just don't want to admit that things can be broken.
Right.
They get comfortable. They get lethargic in life. They just get lazy. And I found at any point in time in my life when I'm like that, I'm just go to work, go home, get paid kind of mentality. And I just, I'm not excited about getting up in the morning. I'm not excited about going to bed. I'm just that flat line, right? You're not really living, but you're living. And disciplines can easily get people caught. Or what, it doesn't even have to be called a discipline, a routine. People have routines. It's a discipline, right? They have to do the same thing every day. They brush their teeth the same way. They do this the same way. And I challenge people all the time. You want to find out if you're stuck in a routine or a discipline, decide. And it's part of I'm working on a workshop series. It's part of the first workshop that I have. And I get people, I talk to them about crossing their arms and crossing their hands. And I'll tell them, okay, if you shave on this side of your face, I want you to now for the next week, shave on the other side. Ladies, you put your lipstick on way, do it the opposite way, right? Just to get people to understand. And I'll talk to people and say, how did that make you feel? Oh, damn, it was uncomfortable. I really didn't like it, right? You told me to wash my body starting at a different place when I'm in the shower. And I have to do that to myself. And
yes.
I learned that probably coming up on, oh my goodness, it'd be close to 30 years ago. I learned that, and I still do it to myself. I still have to practice what I preach. Sometimes, and I think you mentioned that earlier, we'll teach something and then we got to realize like, hey, let's not be a hypocrite. We got to do up, level up and apply that to ourselves, what we're teaching others. So I do that. I still do it. I'll think to myself, okay, damn it. And I did it literally a couple of days ago, I was thinking, oh, as I start shaving. No, I'm shaving on this side. Just because it's a mental thing. It's like igniting a spark inside of my brain. I don't know if you've ever tried that, but just doing
It's
something.
like doing a puzzle. It's like doing a puzzle for your brain. Like I turn around in the shower a different way, or I put my pants on the different leg, or brush your teeth with your other hand.
Isn't it uncomfortable though?
It is, but it is like a mental, it's like reading a book or doing a game. Like, I think it keeps you mentally sharp.
Oh, and here's one where I'm sitting is my favorite spot to sit. This is a big bar table, so it's really high. It's what I got when my kids were younger. And when they come over as a group, my grandson here recently says, "You can't sit there. That's Papa's chair." And he's 8 years old. And I said, "You know what? That's okay. Papa will sit over there." Well, I sat in the other chair. It was so uncomfortable. I'm so used to the routine of my kids growing up or people coming over. They'd always protect. Nobody can sit here. That's Dad's chair. Now it's my grandson. That's Papa's chair. And oh, that's okay. I'll sit over there. But oh my goodness, that uncomfortable feeling. And then, the next day, nobody's here, and I sit here because this is where I do a lot of my work. I just prefer to be out here instead of my office because I have windows everywhere. And it was a sense of relief. I was just like, I sat down in the chair and I was just like,
that's funny. Yeah, that's good. Homing pigeon.
Yeah, I'm back in my chair. Damn you, don't ever sit in my chair again. But
right.
Listeners, routine can be good. Discipline can be good, but don't let it rule your life. Right? You are the captain of your ship. You are the person that, steers your ship. Don't let other people do it. You can have co-pilots that'll help redirect your course, but you are still the master of your destiny of where you're going to go. So what a great conversation. So Gail, I personally find that arrogance and humility are separated by a fine line. One needs some temperate arrogance to be sure and confident in what they do. However, without humility in the mix, can become an out of control ego issue, causing destruction of people emotionally. What is your take on arrogance and humility and how it fits and intertwines in one's life?
I keep thinking of an efficacy score. I work with an efficacy score. I give it all the time, especially, employees or kids or young adults. And on that efficacy score, at the top is arrogance, the middle is humility, and at the bottom is very insecure. So when I see an arrogant score on the efficacy score, Dwight, I instantly know that that individual believes that their way of working is better than everyone else. And I know that because I was arrogant. And I thought that my way of doing things was better than anyone else's. And if they could can't they see? Why are they taking so long? Whatever the issue is or was, that was me. So I'm very sensitive to an arrogant young person. It's hard to flip arrogance past the age of 13. Jesus flipped it for me, hands down. But it's hard to flip arrogance past 13 or 14. And I was starting to head down that road with my oldest son by putting him in situations that he would always succeed. That was my fault as a mom. And I saw it around age 8 or 9. And I very quickly put him in situations with a struggle. Things were more difficult for him because I wanted him to know that there were other people in the world who solve problems and they can get to the result, but the path looks different than yours. When I see a humble or humility score, I know that that person finds value and knows that they have value in the world. And they also have value with the way others work as well. It's a perfect place to be a lifelong learner, to ask questions, to continue to be curious, which is all I would love to try and do. At about the age of 7 or 8, the light goes out. And if you can keep the curiosity alive, then you're always going to ask questions and seek more and want more. And a humble attitude is a great place for a lifelong learner.
That's awesome. I keep on thinking, all this that you talked about, and I can relate to what you're saying. At one point in time would, I've forgotten more than you know, that kind of attitude.
Yeah.
When I was way younger, I was in my 20s. And I think about the fact that all the learned behavior and all the disciplines and different things and routines that caused me to feel that way. And then I also think to what we talked about, being in your lane, right?
Yeah.
Finding your lane.
Mm.
And in your connection point of finding your lane is what you realized, even with your son. You put him in situations where he had to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes kids don't even need you to put them in that situation. They can be like my kids, where they had tumultuous situations with their mom, and then go from a joint situation to where I was a full-time dad. They unfortunately were thrust into that circumstance of struggle, not in a good way. So it's good that you had that ability to have that realization. Doesn't mean that I didn't challenge my kids to struggle when it came to making decisions. I taught them simple things like I teach everybody, but I taught them, what's the difference between a need and a want, right?
Yeah.
Here's vulnerability of our budget. Here's why we can't do this right now. I've got
Mm-hmm.
one income, 5 kids. There's only so much I can do. So I did teach them to struggle that way. But some of the struggles I think that kids go through are thrust upon them from other outward circumstances, and it's just unfair. And hopefully they have a level-headed parent or level-headed grandparents or aunt and uncle or friends that can help them realize, that there is a better path for them, that there is a brighter future, and that life isn't so, you can't be overconfident. I see that in a lot of young people. They're overconfident. And to me, that's just a recipe for disaster. Because when anything does happen that's out of their control, completely out of their control, even if they don't want to admit it, it causes them to spiral. So good for you for realizing that and helping your son.
And sometimes, Dwight, even when, speaking from experience, if you're in a situation and you grow up and obviously you can't control the struggles that are under your roof, you'll have a resilient child. You'll have a resilient, strong student who's learned to navigate situations like that and then can handle things moving forward.
And they become extremely humble. Right? They do. I see that
Right.
with my kids. They become extremely humble. The only thing that's bad, though, is they can become easily walked all over. So, they've gone through strife and trials and tribulations. I've taught them how to, always be kind, genuine, how to, always leave people, like we talked about the Silver Boxes book from Florence Littauer, how to leave people wanting to see you again, leaving them with a gift, a little thing that people don't realize. But it also opens us up to be vulnerable, to have somebody that's stuck in that arrogant phase to walk all over us. So there's a fine line. I like the scale you talked about, arrogance and then humility in the middle. I think we always have to keep on helping one another so that we don't, get stuck in the fact of being too humble. I think that's why I said there's a fine line between, tempered arrogance and being confident and humility. And the more I realize that sometimes I have to be confident, which can be confident arrogance, and other times I need to dial my humility in. I don't think there's any real 100% formula for being the best version of ourselves. Just you have to work on it every day.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah,
totally
I appreciate that, though. Arrogance, better than anyone else, and that is so true, right? And I never thought about the age, though. Hard to flip once you're 13 to 15. They're on that area.
Yeah,
it's so true.
Yeah,
because we also look at our emotional IQ. I don't know how much you've read about emotion, like your IQ, your emotional IQ, and how it is stunted around, depending on males and females, or what can be a little bit different. And it has to do obviously with puberty and the chemistry of our bodies and how it changes. But I find that once their emotional IQ is scarred or cemented in place, it's really tough, because in the rest of their life, they deal with every situation with that emotional IQ. They can be an adult and they're reacting to it like they were 12 or 13, where it was actually, the switch was put in a permanent position. It doesn't have to stay permanent, but they react that way all the time. So when I think about what you talked about, it makes so much sense too, because if they're arrogant at that age, they're going to treat everything in life with arrogance. If they're overly humble, that can be bad too. So it's finding that mixture between the two, right? Which hopefully people that are listening, you wouldn't want to be leveling up and changing. You wouldn't be listening to my show. My followers are people that are, at a place in life where they want to continue to still climb, or they're stuck in a rut and they want to climb. It's everywhere in between, which I find is great, and why I want to bring on, fantastic guests like yourself that they can access, right, to help them level up. So anything else on that before we go on?
No, I was just thinking of humility. I was just thinking of humility and being walked on. And when obviously Jesus got a hold of me, I didn't feel like I had anything to prove anymore. So there wasn't as much to say. I didn't have the need to get there or scrape or crawl or be seen or be known at all. And that was humility for me. That was humility for me. So that was it. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great that you bring that up. Again, it's back to realization.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
To me, there's only one perfect human being ever on the planet, and he died a couple thousand years ago. So
I agree.
I'm just trying to be the best vessel I can for others and do what he's taught, right? And what he sacrificed for us. I want to continue to make sure that wasn't in vain. Right. So,
yes.
So Gail,
yes.
Gail, you brought up victim versus owner mentality, and I find that very intriguing. Many in society today play the victim card and do not own their own garbage. They blame their childhood, their schooling, their friends, their work, etc. Learned behavior is real, and though some of it can have a bearing on who they are, they do not own it and try to improve. They use their past and present experiences as a shield to justify their crap behavior instead of owning it and trying to change. Why do you think that is?
A lack of accountability. The three things that were important before my kids were born that my husband and I agreed on is we wanted to raise contributors to the world. And the second thing that was important is we wanted them to have respect for themselves and others. And the third is integrity. For us, it was hard to have a passive contributor to the world. When you have a contribution, it is an active contribution. Therefore, age-appropriate decisions that they could make to not hurt other people or other people's property resulted in consequences. From what I've noticed, the earlier those consequences take place, the more willing the person and child is to decide one way or the other what's going to happen next. And I totally forgot the question.
You did great. You did great. It was just talking about victim versus owner mentality,
okay.
And right. And
that's it. Yeah.
You did great. I love that though. And I did the same with my kids, but you're right. It is a lack of accountability. Raise contributor, respect for others, integrity. That's great.
So when you have problems on the ground, like matching socks or an A, is an A going to contribute to one of those three that you want? If it's not, then it's not worth your energy.
Yeah.
So would you rather carry an extra umbrella in the rain and give it to someone who doesn't have one, or fly past that person to get an A on the test? I've always been an umbrella person. So you want to carry an extra umbrella for someone that needs it at all times.
What are you contributing to society?
Yeah.
Are you just a passenger? Or are you a participant? And
Right.
that's the biggest thing I find is a challenge in today's society. And, age appropriate decisions, you talked about that. I used to discuss it with my kids all the time. And listeners, age appropriate. Listen to that. Age appropriate. Sometimes you share things with your children or even other people that is just not going to register. Now, my knowledge sharing it with a 20-year-old, some of it is still age appropriate because they just don't have the mental wherewithal to understand what I'm saying because they're still developing their critical thought process. So I need to deal with somebody in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, even my clients in their 80s. I deal with them differently.
Right.
Age appropriate. So be age appropriate, especially with your kids. Don't share things with them. Don't allow them to listen or read or do things that are also outside of their age restriction, right? I already have a hard time with that people don't follow parental guidance. There's a reason these boards exist, is it's to protect the mental mindset of your children. So you thinking they can handle everything, wrong way of thinking. And if you're offended, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. All right. You need to do age appropriate. So I like that part. So Gail, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Questions over suggestions. Questions over suggestions.
I love that. Yeah.
I don't know if I need to go into that, Dwight. Do I? That's pretty self-explanatory.
You'd be surprised. Right?
Oh my.
Right?
Okay. So
my listeners love me. They know I'm teasing them, but it's true. You could discuss a little bit because for some people, something that is simple, because you're a critical thinker like I am, and other people will be, what are you talking about? So yeah, just give us a couple minutes, please.
Here's what I'm talking about. I obviously, I'm super passionate. I'm an intense, passionate person. I am tenacious. And I know that when ownership is key for me when working with people and kids, my own kids. So if I want my kids to do something, and they're older, so let's just see. Okay, my son is listening. He was listening to rap. He was having a rap phase, I would say. And I can't stand rap. I don't care for it. I didn't like what it brought out in him. And so me saying that is different than, how is rap serving you? I notice you're listening to rap when you're stressed out or frustrated. How does that help you in that moment? There's a difference. And even if I don't agree with it, if I ask a question, I am putting that person into a state of having to decide how that thing makes them feel. And they're either going to like it, they're going to disregard what I say, or they're not going to like it. But when I turn my back and walk away, you can be darn sure that they are thinking, I wonder if this is serving me, or how it's serving me, or is it? That's important to me. My son also just got a lifeguarding position. He has a 5:45 a.m. shift. He plays video games till very late at night. As a mom, I would strongly suggest that he go to bed early for that shift. This is what came out of my mouth. I notice you have a shift super early tomorrow morning. How late are you deciding to stay up? Oh, that's a good point. I think I'll go to bed a little earlier. That's a fantastic decision. My other son was feeling a little independent or summer lazy. And I noticed when he was cooking, he was making one quesadilla. He was taking care of his plate, not the rest of them in the sink. And so, of course, in my mind, I wanted to say, pick your butt up, start helping out. This is a family. It's not a one-man band. And what came out of my mouth was, you are a super generous human being. And I have seen you be extremely kind and helpful when people are in need. I've noticed that you I've noticed that you're making one quesadilla or whatever I just said. And he said, yeah, Mom, I'm feeling a little lazy right now because it's summer. And I said, I can understand that. That makes sense. Tell me the season that you need to be in when you're out of the laziness. What does that look like, that season? Are you coming into it? He's like, okay, well. And I said, because when the family is running on all cylinders, we are unstoppable and we need you on that train. The next day, he unloaded the dishwasher unasked and helped out, and he's been helping out more ever since. Those are some of the differences when I say questions over suggestions to put them into a state of having to decide.
I love that, because I can think about how so many cases with my 5 kids where I had to do similar things where initially I wasn't like that. Every kid I become a better parent. Right?
Yes.
And damn it, I always say to people, I didn't write a parenting manual. I think we should do that. All right.
I know.
The parent's guide to, or whatever. Dwight and Gail's guide to raising the ultimate
age
version.
Appropriate questions.
Yes. I love that though. It's just, oh my goodness. My heart just feels glad. This whole conversation has just been amazing. So, well, our time is almost up and I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners, what is the best way to reach you?
My phone number. I'm on WhatsApp too. And then my email, gail@planstoprospercoaching.com.
Okay.
Do you want me to say my phone number?
I'll make sure, if you want your phone number into the show notes, sure. Give them to me. What is it?
608-833-5482.
Okay. I'll make sure the producer puts that into the show notes along with any relative links to your social media. And if there's anything else you want to put into there, just let me know and I'll get that done. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Gail. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.